Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session, Enabling the 4 Stages of COVID-19 Recovery with Automation. My name is Kellen Huang, and I will be your moderator for today's session. Before we get to the presentation, I do have a few housekeeping items. Next slide, please. During the presentation, all participants will be in listen-only mode. Also, today's webinar is being recorded and will be made available on EXL's website. Although lines are muted, we do encourage you to ask questions during today's presentation. Please submit any questions using the questions window located on the right side of your screen. Type your question into the box, click send, and it will be sent directly to a meeting organizer to queue for the Q&A session we will host at the end of the webinar. Should you encounter any technical difficulties during the webinar, please also utilize the questions window to describe your issue, and one of our support staff will follow up with you to troubleshoot. With that, I invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy today's presentation. Now let's meet our speakers. Today we have Ahson Pai, who is a partner who leads EXL's digital consulting practice, focusing on insurance and financial services. His area of responsibility includes driving digital transformation strategy through execution via customer experience-led solutions, leveraging automation, AI/ML, and enterprise architecture to drive high-impact outcomes. Sathya Sethuraman from UiPath has over 20 years of experience in the insurance industry. He has led large-scale digital transformation initiatives and brings critical insights to the application of emerging technologies for differentiated customer experiences and operational efficiency. Now on to today's agenda. On today's agenda, Ahson will be sharing with us emerging trends in insurance during COVID-19, 4 key stages of recovery as the future of work is redefined, and a digital intake demo use case. Sathya will cover hyperautomation, cognitive capabilities, and a contact center solution, as well as the business value delivered across the insurance value chain. Then Ahson and Sathya will show some solution demos and we'll wrap up with Q&A. Without further ado, I'd like to kick things off by welcoming Ahson Pai. Ahson, over to you.
Thanks very much, Kellen. Thank you all, everyone, for joining this webcast with us. And for those of you that know us, I think you already know where EXL operates. For those of you that are new to EXL, just a quick introduction. We are a managed services organization, and we started about 20 years ago. Since inception, we've been involved with the insurance industry. We were born out of an insurance company. And we deliver managed services to the insurance industry, as well as to healthcare and to the emerging business unit segment. And our capabilities include analytics and consulting offerings. So we'll be talking to you today about how we're leveraging automation, AI, analytics as it relates to COVID-19 recovery. And so just as a way to level set, and you look at the COVID-19 impact and change drivers, if you look at where digital transformation started several years ago, is really mostly about the customer's experience and some cost and efficiency benefit at a high level. And at the same time, now what we're starting to see is the impact of COVID-19 has driven the emphasis on customer experience to be more about resilience and safety. And so how do we achieve the resilience and safety in those business models? That's really what we'll be talking about today. But a lot of that has to do with making things geographically independent and offering a paperless model to drive business and deliver services. So for an adjuster not needing to show up to do a damage assessment or not needing paper to be transmitted is absolutely the direction in which we see a lot of the transformations moving, and where the automation is playing an important role in general as it relates to COVID-19 recovery. And we'll go through some of the steps and phases of how we're thinking through the recovery in the next few slides. The second thing is a disparate workforce. How do you deal with people that are working from home, returning to the office shortly, hopefully soon here, and then also your digital labor, working with all of that together. It really comes down to improving collaboration and driving more transparency and stronger metrics around what's happening from an operational perspective. The third element is digital throughput. And so enabling more cognitive automation on the voice side, enabling more automation on the digital intake on the paper side is certainly an important aspect that's going to drive more throughput in the front, middle, and the back office. And so eliminating paper, dealing with expensive voice conversations also becomes an important element as we start to see some volatility in volumes. The need for customer service is also going to be very product dependent as we work through the recovery cycles, which we'll talk about in the next few slides. And then the last 2 points, the financial and the regulatory impact, is very much also leaning in the same direction. It really is coming down to how do you accomplish more with less on the financial pressure side. We're going to see volatility in the markets. Investment portfolios are going to be performing with a degree of volatility. And then obviously cost optimization is going to continue to be a dimension that needs some consideration. From a regulatory perspective, some of the changes that are being made, not just on the Family Medical Leave Act or FFCRA, for example, that's directly going to drive some more volumes in the disability space, in the claims, on the claims side, as well as have a knock-on effect on disbursements and withdrawals. But also we'll see some interesting dynamics on how that'll drive some volumes on the P&C side. Maybe not so much on claims for property and casualty, but more so on things like collections and limiting customer attrition and initiatives to drive more retention around retaining a customer base on the property casualty side. Bottom line is digitization has become more important than it ever was before, and we're going to see a lot of these channels become not just preferred, but over time the expectation is they may be the only, or if not the primary channel that customers will want to engage with. So we'll see that trend emerging. We're all reading the same news articles and trends that are coming, that are emerging. So it's clearly starting to lean very heavily in the direction of how do you leverage digital channels through automation, analytics, and AI, ultimately to lower costs and deliver better customer service, all with the idea of providing more safety and resilience, offering safety to employees and customers alike. So if we go into the next slide, that'll start to cover off on some key topics that are relevant to where we're seeing some trends on the life and annuity space, as well as in the broader property casualty as well from an insurance domain perspective. On the claims side, on a very left column, if you look at life and annuities, obviously going to see a lot of volume pickup on disability claims and potentially death claims as well. So we'll start to see some volumes rise on the absence, disability, and death side. And similarly, we'll see hardship withdrawals, loans, disbursements, etc. That's going to drive customer service volumes. It's going to drive a need for dealing with the manual steps, things like eligibility. The example here being that the withdrawals are penalty-free for the first 100,000. Also, the eligibility at the employee level, the employer level. Those are going to add some manual steps to the process that the new regulations are going to drive. So automation there certainly makes a lot of sense as well, and it doesn't all need to be unattended automation. Some of this can be attended automation to deal with improving the productivity of the individuals that are responsible for dealing for processing claims and claims managers alike. Also more important to the fact that now we're dealing with a work from home environment. On the cost takeout and customer focus, the middle panel, really that's talking about the customer's experience and how do we deal with this in a way in which customers are feeling, the question that customers are going to be asking is, where were you when I needed you most? And so offering the right customer service through some of these automation channels, through, we're going to have some demos that Sathya is going to go through on the customer service side, servicing customers in a seamless manner, dealing with the lower complexity and medium complexity requests, automating those away through cognitive or self-service channels, certainly essential to free up some volume and capacity for folks where staff can focus on the things that are going to be more relevant to dealing with customer service issues as we work through the recovery cycles. We're going to see more improved, more increases or greater activity in the premium shopping space and some focus on customer attrition. And so we will see some temporary surge in shopping for life insurance, and likely also in the property casualty space as well, looking for better coverage and more price performance from an overall value perspective. And also on the property casualty side, we expect to see that focus on attrition Premium givebacks, as a lot of insurers are doing, is certainly going to be another manual step that potentially could be automated. But the idea here is how do we focus on the customer and deal with the spikes that we're going to see on premium shopping and limit the potential for attrition. Lastly, on the insurtech and fintech M&A activity over the next 6 to 12 months, as the performance of the fintech and insurtech firms, alongside with the cash availability at the private equity venture capital space, might start to have some interesting dynamics. We may see some opportunities for medium and large size insurers to acquire fintech and insurtech firms over the next 6 to 12 months. So those are just some macro trends on what we see emerging specific to the insurance industry. On the next slide here, I'll make a few points just on, securing the present. Really, that's about BCP stabilization. Most of that has been done. A lot of the examples that we're going to share with you today, we've done internally to EXL or offered in a consulting basis. I'll give you one example. EXL has been able to realize 95% of its workforce working from home at high levels of productivity. So we've done that in the first 3 weeks in early March. And so a lot of the examples that we're going to share with you, we've either been able to implement internally or are already have already deployed these in a consulting capacity to our client base. So that's number one. Number two, on the BCP side of things, a lot of that has taken shape, and we've seen stabilization across the board, across the insurance sector and broader financial services. The second phase of this, so that's secure the present. The second phase on accelerating the recovery, the main point here is we're not going to see a straight line back to normalcy. It is going to be a jagged line, and there are going to be some peaks and troughs as we deal with this. The example I used, clearly on the life and annuity space, we're going to see some pickup on volumes on the claim side. Similarly, on the retention and premium reconciliation and collections on the property casualty side. However, on life annuities or even P&C for that matter, we may not see new business and underwriting right in focus in the next few weeks. And so as we deal with where the volumes are, it becomes increasingly important to have digital labor as the backbone and offer some buffer capabilities to where the human resources, the human workforce, can be reallocated to areas where we are seeing some peaks in volume. So that volume flexibility, the creation of scale through automation certainly becomes very, very critical as we deal with some of these recovery cycles. The goal here is how do you do what you need to do in accelerating the recovery in a way in which you can also start designing for the future and start thinking about new business models. And so this needs to be done in a modular fashion. The idea is really around on design for the future. What are some of the services that we need to do stay, move, stop analysis on? And what are the services, the segments, the offerings that we want to double down on and create more focus on from a go-to-market perspective? The overall new business model really needs to be thought of in a layered manner. What are the base capabilities that we offer through our various departments, HR, IT, legal? Automation needs to be one of them as well. And then the individual lines of business is the second layer. The third layer then is the products. As we add more products, remove more products, the idea is really around being able to do this without needing significant or substantial capital investments to drive forays into new products. COVID insurance might be a product that might convert into a life policy over time. And so being able to do that from a data-driven perspective becomes absolutely more in focus today than it ever has been before, because it really is around COVID responses. A lot of that has been driven essentially through data. And so the underwriting aspect of policies, life policies, for example, needs to be more centered on data-driven underwriting. And so that's something that we expect to see to take more shape as well. The idea on accelerating the recovery is to build the near-term automations, analytics, AI capabilities in 2, 4, 6-week windows, quick sprints that are deployable in the next 4 to 6 weeks. But to do this in a way in which where it paves the way for the things that need to be done and designed for the future, and thinking through some of the new business models, ultimately resulting in contactless, paperless business models with an added degree of flexibility to add, drop, delete, do a stop, move analysis, stay, move, stop analysis, and be able to determine which products and services we want to double down and create more focus on from a go-to-market perspective. So on the next slide, we'll share with you what EXL has done and built. The next 3 slides start to get into some of the solutions that we've put together. And there's 4 layers to them. The first 3 are on this page. The first is enhancing the employee experience, and not all of these are EXL proprietary technologies. So you'll see Microsoft Teams and Skype, for example, on the top right corner of the page. But the idea is, now that people are working from home, how do you identify who needs help, who needs some collaboration capabilities to do some micro training to get them up to the mark as to where they might need to be, or deal with some drops in productivity as they may arise. Agent assistant guidance, also very important to be able to detect those opportunities up front and be able to drive a smoothing out of productivity across the front, middle, and the back office as we do more and more from a work from home environment. And all of this has been done, like I mentioned, 95% of our workforce has been enabled to work from home, and we've layered in these capabilities on our own operations as well as with our clients to be able to do this in a collaborative fashion on client operations as well. The second piece is the due diligence, and I'll just highlight due diligence and geographical independence for resilience, really thinking about the business model in a way in which we've leveraged the best practices to migrate these processes over. Now that you've got a 3-legged stool, you got work from home, you've got returning to the office, and then you've got digital labor. And so applying our migrations capabilities to where that can be dealt with in a way in which it's seamless transition of these processes, certainly an important element to keep in perspective as well. And we've been able to realize very, very positive results and almost 100% operational uptime in implementing these types of capabilities. The third piece on this slide is the scalability of the digital workforce, and that's really key. Sathya and I will walk you through some examples. I'll give you an example of a digital intake demo, which is really a content extraction capability on structured and unstructured the technologies. We've built some capabilities for the insurance industry that are really focused on underwriting claims, endorsements, and other paper ingestion problems across the L&A and the property and casualty space, to where we can realize, improve throughput on the paper ingestion cycle. But the idea here is dealing with cognitive capabilities for voice interactions, for paper ingestion. That will unlock a lot of productivity to allow robotics to drive the middle and the back office as we drive front, middle, back office opportunities to realize more throughput end to end. The second piece is the intelligent automation for improved STP, and really that's about how do we look at enabling more capabilities, not just for automation, but the idea here is to bring in a narrow AI and analytics that can drive particular and specific use cases, specific business value on key problem areas, be it claims, be it underwriting, claims decisioning, adjudication. All of those areas need some very narrow interventions. And again, these are not several month builds. These are 2, 4, 6 week sprints that we can rapidly deploy. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that we've done from a productivity perspective or a implementation perspective. Thirdly, scale for volatility. As we have volatility in the space, we've got to do this in a way in which digital labor can offer the human capacity to move around, have some plug and play capability from one area to another. Like I mentioned, maybe it's claims where the initial volumes will rise for disability insurance as an example. Perhaps it's not underwriting, but being able to move people from underwriting to the claims area on a moment's notice becomes very essential. Now, if we go to the next slide, that covers the digital command center. And this is about, it's a key element. We've built something called the digital command center, which looks at the 3-legged stool, the working from home environment, the working remotely environment as well, which is work from home and working remotely. And then secondly, focusing on the returning to the office space, to the office environment, people that are working from an office environment. And thirdly, the robotics initiatives that can link both together and offer more flexibility and scale, like I mentioned earlier. All of that management needs to happen through productivity measurement, dashboards, performance measurement, and SLAs being adhered to. All of that needs to really come from capabilities and metrics that can wrap around all 3 aspects of working from home, working in office, and also digital labor. And we built dashboards and capabilities around that and deployed that on multiple clients as well as on our internal operations to drive long-term value from an end-to-end perspective, and to be able to drive better outcomes as we've got this hybrid workforce working from different locations. So if we go to the next slide, that gives you the digital ecosystem view, which will outline where we are on an overall architecture perspective. Sathya, if we could please click over to the next slide.
Ahson, which slide you are looking at?
This slide. Yeah, thank you. Maybe there's a bit of a delay there.
Yeah.
And so here, if you look at the yellow boxes, those are the digital labor slides. Those are the digital components that we've just mentioned. The blue outline boxes are the ecosystem components. So enabling the business management, virtual onboarding, recruiting, building scale for volatility, the enabling of operations management and enhancing the employee experience through SLA's dashboards, and also driving more collaboration across the workforce, certainly an important element. The yellow boxes are pre-built components. Everything you see in the yellow box is either in production, if not all of it at one client, across several clients. It's certainly something that is available and in production today. So content extraction, digital intake, we're going to show that example to you here shortly. Claim segmentation, fraud analytics, claim setup, eligibility bots, and litigation propensity models, auto adjudication. All of these analytics and AI components are in existence and running in production today. The key element is, as you do this, how do you find more opportunities for automation? So process mining, Sathya is going to talk about process discovery and digital discovery capabilities around identifying the right processes for automation, which also is a very important element. And then the second piece down below is the digital command center. The insights, the orchestration, the metrics to wrap all this around is certainly an important element. The whole idea here is, how do you build an automation-driven, AI-enabled, and analytics-powered ecosystem, which is geographically independent, gives you some scale, number two, on the digital workforce, as well as the work from home and the returning from office workforce. Overall, how do you drive more productivity across the entire operation, across those three modalities of labor workforce, while at the same time ensuring adherence to SLA's metrics and also being in compliance with information security requirements as people are working from home. So a lot of the InfoSec requirements need some special consideration also, which is wrapped into the digital command center metrics platform that I mentioned earlier, to be able to exercise more operational and regulatory controls as we have this disparate workforce. So that's an ecosystem view. Yellow boxes are really the automation, analytics, and AI components, and we'll talk through some of those examples in the upcoming slides. If we go to the next slide, please. This is just the first three elements are the key areas where we've got digital intake, contact center, and removing the need for expensive paper. There's some examples where we get up to 80–90% automation on ingestion of paper. So we'll talk about that example in a minute. Contact center automation to deal with expensive voice conversations as volumes pick up on claims, for example, or questions that customers might be asking on disbursements and lending, for example, to be able to deal with those lower and medium complexity requests through a contact center automation is certainly something that'll give more scalability and flexibility in the overall workforce. Automating routine work like policy maintenance, administration, and service management is certainly another area where there's opportunity to free up capacity and also get more collaboration and productivity across the remote working from home, working from office, and digital workforce. At the same time, looking at analytics to drive revenue and new premiums and writing new premium and policies, taking a data-driven approach as we deal with pandemic-specific risks or otherwise, also having a better way to deal with the measurement of risk, the detection of determining the appetite for risk, at the same time pricing for that risk is certainly something that's going to have more of an analytics and data-driven play as it relates to writing new policies. And then lastly, like I mentioned, building new products, stay, move, stop analysis as we go to market with new offerings, and we build out future business models. Analytics and automation is going to play a key role there as well. So with that said, I'm going to go to the next slide and cover off in these two areas, which we'll run through very quickly. There are two categories of intake of digital intake examples we'll walk you through. One is on claims, and there's really part A, which is short-term disability, and part B is long-term disability. And then the second component is really around policy administration, and we'll work through structured, unstructured documentation, as well as some handwritten and typewritten examples that you'll see how we can use AI in a way to deal with extracting the information off the paper, driving more throughput from an end-to-end perspective, and shortening the ingestion cycle, while at the same time delivering a better customer experience. Sathya, if we could go to the demo, please.
Are you able to see the demo, Ahson?
Yes, it's come up. Thank you. So the insurance industry does about 3 to 5 billion pages annually. We'll see a lot of spike in volume here with disability claims. We expect longer cycle times, but we want to try and avoid those cycle times in a way in which where we can deliver a good customer experience and also allocate resources where they're needed most. Two examples. One is disability claim, and the second is the beneficiary change. And we'll go through a handwritten form example, multiple field types, signatures, text boxes, check boxes, etc., and also attending physician statements, STD, LTD forms, and realizing significant cost savings up to 80–90% improvement in throughput as we deal with ingesting paper. So this first example, the file comes in, and you'll see that getting picked up from a flow perspective. And it'll look at the short-term disability claim form, looking at the individual, the address, date of birth, social security, gender, phone number, etc. And there's some examples of how we could deal with validations also to be able to improve the throughput and limit exceptions later on. And now it's looking for employment, the employer section, employer name, address, state, and other details. Signatures can be verified, again, significantly improving the limitation on protecting against fraud, and also using AI capabilities to be able to pick up these types of fields from unstructured document sets. Similarly, on attending physician statements, to be able to go to different types of structured documents, differently structured documents, and picking up the right areas, the right inputs, whether it's diagnosis, the physician's details, etc. Certainly an area where AI is very, very useful to drive a more impact from an automation perspective. And then we'll look at the long-term disability example, which is similar, picking up the policyholder's details, name and address, and the phone number details, etc., along with the diagnosis. Again, using AI capabilities to look at areas of the form where details need to be picked off and brought into the workflow. Again, an unstructured example of looking at the attending physician statement and leveraging leveraging AI for picking data off unstructured forms. The third piece here is really around exception handling, as we look at documents that may not meet quality criteria for scan. You see a poorly scanned image here. That may require manual exception handling, and as the manual data entry is done, to be able to drive more improvement in the overall workflow and the overall model. So now we look at the beneficiary change example, which is going to go through an example of cost savings up to 80–90% improvement in the throughput, and also driving overall efficiencies from a customer experience perspective. Social security number validation on this, and then the exception handling should be 9 digits, but it's coming up as 8. And so doing those types of validation and checks is done early on, again, in order to drive more throughput end to end, and not have those exceptions later on in the process cycle. So a number of these validations can be applied early on, again, driving more throughput. If there are missing data fields, or there's opportunities to amend and concatenate certain fields and data points up front, that's absolutely something that we want to try and do from an end-to-end perspective, and be able to do that up front, so that the bottom, the front, the middle, the back office processes that then follow can be done in a much more seamless way, not kicking out exceptions later on. So overall, what you've seen here is enabling straight-through processing, reducing the overall cycle time, and getting turnaround, quickening the turnaround to drive a better customer experience. Absolutely something we need to do as we deal with some of the volume surges due to COVID-19. And then the overall idea is to build a paperless and a distance-independent operating model to provide more safety and resilience to our customers and employees alike. So with that, I'll turn it over to my colleague Sathya from UiPath to walk through some of UiPath's capabilities and also relevant demos that we'll both walk you through as well. Sathya, over to you.
Sure. Thank you, Ahson. And as Ahson mentioned about how the industry is moving, one from a shorter term perspective of addressing the current scenarios, and also building that resilience into the new business model that will kick off in after next 6 months, and how to be part of that leadership enterprises that are going to not only survive but also grow phenomenally during that phase of the new normal. So given that, where we have seen is once upon a time, the automation was looked at by many of the financial services and insurance executives as a very tactical task-based automation that is usually used for just saving few hours here and few hours there. Whereas when they kickstarted large transformation programs that are driven top down with millions of dollars and number of years, at least 3 to 5 years, investing into those large transformation. And the executives thinking were that only those sort of large programs and large investments can deliver larger benefits. But in the meantime, end of 2019, what has started happening was some of those executives very mature in the financial services and insurance enterprise area have started looking at some of the benefits that were delivered by the automation because of the maturity level of the center of excellences, but also have started looking at the transformation programs have been lacking or lagging behind in the delivery of the benefits that where they were about to deliver, and they were becoming very slow, and started thinking about how do I start using automation as a part of this large scale transformations, which is an example is digital transformation, and to accelerate the benefit from those transformations. And what they have started doing that is, and they have actually, we went into lot of discussions along with partners like EXL with some of the customers executive to start even thinking that how the automation can be embedded into some of those enterprise conversations from both the top down perspective and bottom up standpoint. And when we started looking at that, we all started realizing that when it was a simple task automation, it was very simple capabilities that needs to be there, like that includes build, manage, and run. But when the automation needs to support such a large transformation deals or transformation programs, then it also needs to have much more richer capabilities that includes discover and the core components of build, manage, and run, but also engage and measure. These capabilities are very critical to support those large programs. And what we have seen is that the financial services industry was shifting to new normal, the post-COVID scenario. The population of that mature customers who are discussing, which is 27-30% of the customers who have started automation journey, have phenomenally shifted to double it. Around 60% of our customers, the executives, are now discussing about hyper automation. So when we talk about hyper automation with respect to those transformation program, the hyper automation should support your end-to-end life cycle, your automation at scale, and automation for both top-down and bottom-up, and to supplement a large-scale transformation deal. So that is what the definition of hyper-automation, and we are seeing the capabilities here, which we will share with you post this discussion, and you can go through, and happy to have further conversation along with our partners and ourselves with you. And when it comes to the hyper automation, what we have also realized is that with those mature customers who have kickstarted programs a year ago, is that the robots or the automation being a part of the employee's journey in that large scale transformation, the robots require 4 AI skills. And these 4 AI skills are very critical for actually removing the friction between the human workforce and digital workforce, and actually merging and supplementing the human workforce with the digital workforce. And what we have seen is um, for accelerating the benefit of transformation, an example I mentioned about was digital transformation. So the gear, usually we have been discussing about straight through processing as one of the levers. So the straight through processing has been there as a concept for 20 years. But where it was failing was that in the process of transitioning to straight through processing, the current process has not been fully understood. And even if it is understood, it is not seamlessly designed to enable the upstream multi-channel. And even if that is done, there is a huge backlog when it comes to the document ingestion and data ingestion with respect to digitization. And even that is done, 60% of the process were stuck because insurance is such a heavy data intensive work where it requires human interaction 40 to 60% of time. So the AI, what we are currently presenting here, actually brings all those 4 skills to tie up that end to end and also put human in the loop to actually support that straight through processing. And then coming to the next one, let's go one by one on each one of the capabilities. The first one is process understanding. Why do you put process understanding first? Because process understanding actually contains 2 different elements. One is process mining from top down and the task mining from bottom up. So what happens is the process mining provides an end-to-end view by a operational head or a departmental head where they can actually roll out this program and say, see that an example is claim. I'll be showing quickly the claims example. From first notice of loss to the settlement and closure or litigation and closure, an end-to-end process is looked at and seen which are the area where you can simply do that changes, process optimization only through behavioral change. You need not even uh, take robot as a hammer and chase the nail. You can simply make some behavioral change and address that. And there are some places where the process will get stuck because of lack of enablement of different systems, and provide that is where you can deploy automation to actually complement the workforce to handle those. So looking at that end to end, but in the meantime, you will also know that by task mining, you will also know by rolling out the tasks to a specific set of users that perform similar role to find out what is the 60% of processes that go through seamlessly in the straight through, and what is the 40% of exception that where you need to build certain capabilities to provide human in the loop. So now I'm going to show you a demo in process mining in PNC claims, where you can simply look at the process mining, where when you look at top down, provides a overall view of claims. And if you look at it, it looks at events, activities, and everything. And when you look at the next step, the trending in the bottom, if you see claims closed is actually trending down, whereas the open cases are trending up. What is happening is 80% of the claim that are in collision property damage, the claims are being recycled. If you look at the claim transaction, it is actually recycled. So what is the reason? What we saw was majority of them are recycled because of subclaims as well as document requirement. And this is where actually it will provide you, if I look at collusion claim, which forms almost 55% of the overall claims, now I go and see that the longest pending transactions, you can actually automate the document intake and you will be able to automate it. And also, process understanding does not help you only from automation or looking at behavioral change. It will also help you in quality review and auditing, because you will get data to such a microscopic level of user, an example, adjusters, special investigation units at that level of insights. So you'll be able to create that continuous improvement with that iterative analytics, and also you can use it for auditing to avoid any fraud, potential for fraud. And why it is important in this COVID scenario? It helps, as I mentioned, it helps continuous improvement, quality review, when which is very, very critical when most of your workforce is working remotely. And also to look at the remote workforce performance, the process understanding is very critical to continuously monitor that performance and improve the performance. Now, coming back to the slide, next slide, the bottom up, the computer vision actually enables the bottom up uh, 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 digital workforce. How does it work? When you go with process mining and task mining and find out that which are the processes that are much ripe to automate and change and optimize, your workforce can easily look at their day-to-day task and start automating it. Number one, on a very, very lighter side, on the left side of the spectrum, you have task capture. Those task capture capabilities that are built on a lightweight visual understanding will be able to help you in documenting the process and sending it to the center of excellence. But there are some power users, such as actuaries, an example. They know Excel sheet better than even Microsoft folks. They were able to easily create any script on the Excel sheet. They were able to jump in and start automating their own task through UiPath Studio X and deploy it with speed. So this actually helps in improving your efficiency of your remote workforce and improve resiliency. And also, most important thing in COVID scenario, remote workforce is also accessing all this information through VDA and Citrix. And if you look at it, the visual understanding and computer vision actually helps in automating those automation through the tasks through the virtual desktop, and was able to do it with such a ultimate precision while maintaining data security such as personally identifiable information, HIPAA requirements, and whatnot. And in a recent example, there are multiple examples. A recent example is a bank that has implemented an attended robot to help the remote workforce in handling the recent PPP transaction spike. And another insurer has recently rolled out such a remote workforce attended automation to handle the hardship withdrawal and also workers' compensation claims that increased in the recent past. Coming to the next is document understanding. As Ahson showed you, the document understanding is very critical because insurance and financial services industry hinges upon data. So the data is very critical also for your digital transformation programs. So given that, let me directly jump into the COVID-19 scenario. Until now, the industry has been grappling around, multiple OCR solutions that provides, structured data extraction to unstructured. How do I use it? So we have worked with some of the industry leaders that I discussed in my past slides to actually create a document understanding platform where you need not worry about what sort of document comes in and how do you manage those types of document and how do you manage those costs of each document. Instead of that, the robots actually takes the document, slices and dices the document, digitize it, classify it, and then extract and use 150 plus OCR platforms and intelligent OCR partners that we work with as a black box. Again, you need not worry about how do I sign up with them, how do I manage the cost. Don't worry about that. The UiPath document understanding platform manages that entire pipeline and will be able to deliver it. An example, the recent past is again the hardship withdrawal and disability claims, where we were helping our customers to actually handle the volume spike by addressing the most critical bottleneck in the automation, which is digitization and data ingestion, by working hand to hand with our partners and our customers to provide you a automation mechanism to extract data from the whole spectrum of structured, handwritten, semi and unstructured documents, and we're able to provide optimum cost to accuracy. The next one is about the conversational AI, and we know that, again, coming back to the COVID scenario, there is a phenomenal increase in contact center volume, specifically in the commercial lines, small business, and also specifically in the life, annuity, and retirement space, as Ahson was mentioning. But also we see that this spike will go in personal lines in few months. It's not going to be immediate, it's going to continue. So as Ahson mentioned, in different scenarios, the contact center spikes are going to come. So we built this multi-channel ecosystem, again, working with partners like EXL and the consultants, industry leading consultants and advisors like Ahson, to enable customer self-service, agent assist, to shift the process to the left so that much of those works can be easily handled with chatbots, virtual assistants and whatnot, and also seamlessly connect those experience when the customer wants much more complex help, seamlessly transfer them to a remote contact center assistants who are enabled with virtual assistant or the digital assistants to serve the customer faster, and thereby achieving a hybrid automation. Here I'll be showing a quick chatbot how it works at scale, because here the chatbot works with a secure connection with our robots. And when I say robots, it actually works through our orchestrator, which actually creates a queue mechanism where when the claimant come here and start interacting with the chatbot connects with our orchestrator, which actually can access hundreds of robots in the background. And the next available robot picks up this request and creates a secure layer, creates a two-factor authentication, gathers the information from the policy admin, but still creates two-factor authentication, sends it to the claimant. Once the claimant authenticates that, now provide the information from the policy admin system to the chatbot. And you can see this, how the robot in the background start working, and it start churning the data, pulls the information, and pre-fills the information. I'll make it a little bit faster, and then provides that to the chatbot. And chatbot starts asking next question: when is the death? What is the date of death? What is the reason? And also, chatbot gathers the information that includes the documents, and robot does the OCR, aggregates all the documents, validates external documents, and creates a claim. And if the robot sees that the claim is the policy has run more than 5 years, and if the claim is less than total amount of claim is less than 50,000, it can also connect to some of the external data sources to verify whether this death has happened, and also ask for the customer to provide the bank details and settle the claim seamlessly. If it is not, if it is a complex claim which needs to go to a human in the loop, then it sends that claim through attended automation to a claims adjuster to have the review of the claim and settle the claim. We'll stop there and then come back to a couple of scenarios, just two scenarios I want to walk through. We have seen which are the areas. Again, we will share this slide, which are all the areas of opportunities that you can see immediately in the short term, medium term, and long term with respect to. And also the thing we were talking about doesn't mean that this customer does not have bottom up. This is a top down banker that has phenomenally released 1 million of hour of capacity, and also targeting 3 million hours capacity in 2 years. And there is an insurer who have started with the bottom up, but now they are getting into the top down automation, where the bottom up automation has released almost 118,000 hours within 6 months, and they saved 140,000 euros. And they are now targeting 1 million hour of saving or 1 million hour of capacity release through the remote workforce, top down. Now we will open it up for Q&A.
Great, thank you, Sathya. So as a reminder, please submit your questions using the questions window located on the right side of your screen. Our first question today is, how can the rebound be accelerated, and what are the nuances to consider in near or medium term, in the near medium term, as the volumes fluctuate? Ahson?
So thank you for that, Kellen. I think, look, it's some of the things that we covered on the slide where that we went through earlier. But just to summarize, finding out, number one, it's about finding out where the volumes are, and number two, it's about where to apply the automation. So if you look across life and annuities, claims volumes are going to be up for disability and death claims, for example, short-term, long-term disability, absence management. How do we look at identifying how we can apply robotics there, do the eligibility checks, and then redeploy the human workforce where the needs are, while taking capacity away from areas where there may be lower volumes. For example, right this minute, new business and underwriting may not be where there is a ton of activity going on, or quotations, creation of quotations, for example. Similarly, on the P&C side, collections and customer retention is going to be an important area of focus. How do we deploy robotics initiatives in other parts of the business to where the low, medium complexity work can be reallocated, and then the capacity, human capacity, redeployed on where we are seeing 3x, 4x, 7x improvement or increases in volumes. So, from an automation perspective, focusing on the lower and the medium complexity tasks, whether that's customer service, or anywhere across the value chain, across the front, middle, and back office, and on driving robotics capabilities to handle the low and medium complexity tasks, giving the high complexity and moderately high complexity tasks off the human employees, and reallocating the volumes reallocating the workforce where the volumes are landing. And then also, second part of the automation is to use digital intake and cognitive virtual assistants, the examples that Sathya and I shared with this audience, to deal with a better engagement on the customer side for, again, the lower and the moderate complexity requests that are coming in, while also driving more throughput in the value chain across the front, middle, back office processing cycle. And really, the underpinning here is finding out where the right opportunities lie. Once these initiatives are put in place, 3 to 6 weeks to kind of deploy some early robotics initiatives as we get them to mature, as we look at more processes using digital discovery capabilities, AI-based discovery, which is part of the AI fabric in UiPath, as Sathya mentioned earlier, becomes incredibly important to identify what's next. What are the second tier, third tier processes? Where are my bottlenecks in the process, so that we're driving maximum impact in the near term as we start building out the recovery cycle and as volumes start coming back to normal in other areas of the business, other than the few that we handle where we do expect some spikes in volumes. Sathya, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, that's a great point, Ahson. My only point, addition to what you mentioned now, is that when we are looking at the short-term immediate impact, look at bottom-up automations. That includes the immediate, 2 to 6 weeks, as Ahson rightly mentioned, immediately for document understanding. How do you unlock that? Look at documentation of the process design document and immediately get into the citizen-led development, those sort of things, and also attended automation. As I mentioned, how do you enable your remote workforce to work securely? In the meantime, also in parallel, you should also think about from top down, look at the process mining and task mining to roll it out and see that how you can help, how this process volume and quality will evolve over next 3 months, and see that what you need to address in next 6 months to 1 year.
Thank you, Sathya. Our second question is how best to address productivity loss as work from home plans are put in place?
Okay, if I can take that first, Ahson. So when we talk about productivity loss, this goes back to helping bottom up in the current scenario. So enabling your employees with the digital assistance, would definitely improve productivity, because now it is much more difficult to work through your virtual desktop or Citrix. And that is where the main concern is, because as the employee actually access, they need to be very cautious about the security of customer information, and also how do you help the customer much faster based on those transactions that are coming to you. So given your workforce, so digital assistance is a very important capability that is very critical for improving the capability for now. In the meantime, again, looking at top down, seeing that how the employee, what are the repetitive process that the employees are going through right now that you can automate in the future when the transaction volumes either start going up or start stabilizing after 3 to 6 months, and rolling out that process understanding to look at that and build resilience towards next 6 months is what is critical. So looking at bottom up attended automation, again top down, the most critical thing is understanding the current process through process understanding, and also look for the ecosystem where Ahson mentioned about ecosystem of how can you shift some of those to customer self-service through multi-channel capabilities. So those are some of the top-down capabilities that you may want to look at on a longer-term perspective. Ahson?
I think that's bang on, Satya. I mean, I would maybe just add a couple of dimensions to this. I think it's three things. One, how do you apply automation and apply digital labor in a hybrid modality with the human workforce? Number one. Number two, how do you use robotics to offer a buffer to the low complexity tasks that are coming across and drive automation on the lower medium complexity processes that need to be automated? And thirdly, it's really about the visibility and the metrics that we can wrap around the hybrid workforce performance, so the digital workforce along with the human workforce, looking at the metrics and identifying where there's peaks and troughs and bottlenecks, not just on a week by week basis, but I'm talking minute to minute, hour by hour, day by day, to be able to drive more throughput from the entire operational ecosystem, as you correctly mentioned. I think the underpinning to all this is understanding what are the key processes to automate. That's really step one. The second step under that is, before we start getting into deploying automations, I think attended automation can be deployed very near term, but also taking a quick step back, and the medium term, short term, medium term answer is deploy robotics for maximum benefit and get scale, capacity, deal with the volatility, but also have a bifocal lens on this to be able to identify with a hybrid workforce, are there any quick hit, quick win opportunities to re-engineer the workforce to re-engineer the workflow, to where we can get more benefit across the board. So really three things: automation, digital labor, and how do you get that to work in hybrid capacity and get the most benefit from a human and the digital labor component. Number two, building a buffer for the lower complexity work. And then three, visibility on metrics, et cetera, all enabled through doing the right approaches and having the right approaches on process reengineering and looking at it end to end.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ahson. That is all the time we have for today's session. We will do our best to respond to the remainder of your questions directly via email. I'd like to thank the audience for taking the time to join us today. If you'd like someone to contact you about what you've seen today, please visit the Contact Us page on exlservice.com and UiPath.com. And as a reminder, today's session was recorded and will be sent along to you in the coming days. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes today's webinar. Thank you for your participation and have a wonderful rest of your day.